Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dal, and this past week I spent a lot of time playing my rogue, gearing him to the teeth, especially during the Turbo Boost event that has allowed players to really unshackle their possibilities and obtain some of the best gear and upgrade it all the way to the maximum levels with uncapped crests and even warbound transferable Valorstones. This event has been amazing when it comes to trying to create the most powerful character that is available, and I think I hit pretty much a peak with my rogue, at least for this week specifically. However, this event and the gearing process has definitely been grindy, but over time I did find a couple of different ways for me to be able to bypass some of that grind and actually create a bit more efficiency when it comes to getting the most out of the Turbo Boost event without completely burning out myself. Though I do wish somebody told me all of these tips while I was in the middle of my grind initially, as that definitely would have been helpful during my journey. And that's essentially what I want to do in this video, is share some of those gearing tips, especially to so many players that are returning players or players that haven't played War Within so far, but are willing to give War Within a shot during the Turbo Boost event, since it is the best event available in order to help you catch up on gear and start diving into seasonal content. So I wanted to go over some of my tips as to how to further improve your efficiency during the Turbo Boost gearing event, specifically for returning players in mind. As always, if you guys want to see more regular updates for War Within expansion, be sure to follow the channel and subscribe. But otherwise, let's dive right in. Now, one of the tips that I wish somebody told me really early on during the Turbo Boost event, before I started to endlessly grind the Mythic Plus dungeons, I wish someone told me that delves actually have some value with this event. Initially on PTR, it didn't look like delves were going to get any special treatment for Turbo Boost, which seemed kind of odd, but whenever I ran delves on PTR, you weren't earning more gilded crests at the end of your run necessarily, so it looked like it was just going to be a boost for players that do dungeons and even maybe raids, but like delve players will still have a cap of how many gilded crests they can get a week from delves, which seemed a little bit odd. However, it looks like delves do get a slight leg up during the Turbo Boost event, at least if you were to get a delve map at the end of your run and then get to open the delve chest in a tier 11 delve, as that chest specifically has gotten upgraded. Instead of dropping just 10 gildeds in a tier 11 delve, it's now 20 gildeds. With how fast you can run a delve in most cases, it's actually a lot more efficient than running a single dungeon. So it is something that you would want to utilize in a tier 11 delve specifically, and some delves are going to be better than others, but if you could get yourself, let's say, Fungal Folly as a bountiful delve, that one would be ideal in particular. There's a couple other good ones. I think the Undermine one is really good with Street Sluice, but also the one in Ashkahet with the Spiral Weave. That's also another one that's really easy to do for most players, even on tier 11 difficulty. Now, the easiest way to guarantee a map right now would be to summon the mini-boss into the delve using the Wave Scrambler. Now, this is an item that you will have to purchase on one of your characters that has enough undercoins in order to be able to afford it. As of right now, that currency is not warbound transferable. It is on PTR, which is kind of where I'm recording this video, and hopefully maybe I can just push this update a little bit early, because I would have loved during Turbo Boost event to be able to transfer all of those undercoins to a single character, whether you're looking to buy a bunch of cosmetics or just to get more Wave Scramblers for all of your alts. But using a Wave Scrambler inside of a delve is how you can summon the Underpin boss. Defeating the Underpin boss once you get into 50% health is how you can get a guaranteed map for that run, and using the map inside of a tier 11 delve with the hidden box or hidden trove at the end of the run, that is how you're going to be able to get yourself 20 gilded crests. And like I mentioned before, certain delves like Fungal Folly can actually be done really quickly, so you're spending very little time in there, and you can earn up to, combined together with the map, 27 gilded crests for like 5, maybe 7 minutes worth of effort at most, which is kind of wild compared to the 20 minutes you would spend inside of a plus 12 dungeon. And if you were to complete all 3 of your tier 11 delves plus the map for a week, then you're looking at about 41 gilded crests every single week from delves for very little time spent in comparison to the grinding that you had to do in dungeons, which basically means that most dungeons will end up being about anywhere between 20 to 25 minutes or so in terms of length, but delves are super easy to get through. They don't take nearly as much time investment, so I feel like they actually end up being a much more efficient scenario for you to dive into, which gives delves actual value within the Turbo Boost event. Now, during the Turbo Boost event, players are finding themselves really craving two specific currencies more than anything in order to be able to upgrade their items and craft a bunch of pieces. One of them being Gilded Crests, which are very straightforward. In most cases, doing Mythic Plus dungeons, but also maybe some delves on the side, can get you a decent bit of Gilded Crests very quickly, depending how much time you have to farm all of those dungeons, which is a lot of instances for you to dive into. Though another currency that players are actually finding themselves not nearly as plentiful on, like Gilded Crests, are very doable to obtain, but the other currency that's also very necessary but not as easy to obtain so far has been Valorstones. With many players finding themselves actually a bit of a struggle as they're running out of Valorstones a lot quicker than they are running out of Gilded Undermine Crests instead. So you'll kind of have this new stopgap of Valorstones kind of blocking some of your process. They did make them warbound transferable, which is awesome because you can now transfer your Valorstones from an old character to your main character. So any time spent on those alts doing dungeons or raids, you can now transfer a portion of that currency to your main in order to help speed up the process. However, you still do need some efficient ways for you to be able to farm up the Valorstones rather quickly. And right now, seems like the best way to farm Valorstones as of this moment is to do World Soul Memories. To be able to enter a World Soul Memory, you need to get Radiant Echoes, which you'll actually get from Delves, so it looks like Delves are back here to the rescue. But when you complete a Bountiful Delve, you get yourself a Radiant Echo, which I did a lot of Delves on my alts. When it comes to early gearing, I mean, it's a lot easier to dive into those than trying to get into, like, you know, decent item level dungeons or anything. So I actually have a lot of these stored up on my character, and I think a lot of other players would too as well, because Delves have been pretty lucrative when it comes to gearing up a fresh new character. And what you want to do is take those Radiant Echoes and take them to a World Soul Memory event, which kind of rotate throughout different zones of Khazakar where they're active. And usually what you want to do is spend 5 Echoes at a time in order to be able to enter a World Soul Memory so that you come out with additional boosts towards 2 currencies. Coffer Key Shards, which gets you back into the Delves, but also Valorstones. And inside of World Soul Memory, you just run around and kill stuff and do little events, but for the most part, it's very straightforward. Just roaming around, killing anything that moves, as well as slaying any of the rares that spawn during the event. And so far, players are reporting that this is right now the most efficient way for you to be able to get Valorstones, whether you're looking to use them on a main character or transfer them around across all characters. So if you have any characters that have the ability to get a bunch of Radiant Echoes from Delves, you can start converting those strictly into Valorstones as you need them. Now, during this whole Turbo Boost event, I actually noticed there's a lot of friends of mine that are coming back to the game that didn't really play back in Dragonflight or War Within, and are not really familiar with the whole upgrade system of Dragonflight as well as War Within expansions. But the system in itself is actually something that players do enjoy, at least on paper. It allows you to take certain items that are like, let's say, normal quality and make them heroic adjacent, or heroic items and make them mythic adjacent, or take mythic, some of the best items out there, and really boost them to the highest levels possible with a very straightforward way of how to be able to do so through the currencies of Crests and Valorstones. However, as you're gearing out your character, most players that are returning don't know that you can actually start to trade up crests that you may not find useful anymore. As you get better item level and better gear, eventually you outgrow certain currencies, and if you have a bunch of them in bulk sitting in your bags, then they're kind of wasting space. But you can actually trade up those currencies in War Within. So if, let's say you have a bunch of Weather Crests, but you don't really have any use for them, you can start trading 45 of them for 15 Carved Crests. And you can do the same thing with 45 Carved Crests to trade them in for Ruined Crests, and you can do the same thing from 45 Ruined Crests into Gilded Crests. So all of those currencies can be traded upwards in order to actually find some use for your character within the Turbo Boost event. So if you're sitting on a bunch of these currencies, definitely make sure to visit Vaskarn in the main Dornogal area, Mythic Aspirations building, specifically the main upgrade building, in order to trade up all of those crests if you're sitting on a bulk of them. I definitely noticed that a bunch of my alts were sitting on a bunch of Ruined Crests, and I was able to liquidate them all into Gildeds. So a bunch of my alts actually got a nice little bump in terms of some of their mythic gearing and upgrading progression just by converting all of those useless crests into something that's a little bit more usable. Another convenience for those returning players actually is the discounts that you have when it comes to upgrading items. So in most cases when you're upgrading a piece of gear, it'll take you 15 gilded crests or any other crest in order to upgrade that item by an extra rank. However, if your main character is geared to the teeth and has high item level pieces in every single one of their slots, it will actually allow all of y'all to get discounts on some of their pieces. Like my rogue is fairly well geared and has really good weapons, and because my weapons are super high item level and maxed out, that means my Death Knight's weapons now can actually have a bit of a reduced cost. So instead of costing you 15 gilded crests, now it's only going to be 10, which is kind of massive, because when you put it in perspective of, just think of how many gilded crests you get in a dungeon. Like running a +7 allows me to upgrade best in slots weapon by an extra rank, or running a +12 allows me to upgrade it by 2 ranks. And it's actually kind of massive, because upgrading gear on your ults, on your main, whilst it was a bit of a grind and took a little bit of time, on your ults is actually kind of lightning fast in comparison. And this discount right now, as I'm gearing my mage, or at least spending a little bit more time on some of the ults like my mage, I'm noticing that the gear upgrade system is just so much more noticeably better on that alt character after I've done my initial grind on my current main of rogue. So this is a massive boost for you to be able to play your alts, and it's almost like a reward in a way. After you end up maxing out your main character, gearing your alts actually becomes, at least in terms of time spent, feels more like a breeze more than anything, and that's actually a really nice feeling overall. Now, on the channel so far, when talking about the Turbo Boost, we primarily covered it from an angle of PvE, but what about players that are more interested in PvP content instead? Because the Turbo Boost also affects PvP gear. They've increased the item level scaling of Honor gear, as well as Bloody Tokens or Open World PvP gear, and Conquest gear just boosted them up immediately. So if, let's say, you have a main character, you'll just notice that as soon as the Turbo Boost event became active, all of your gear's value just went up immediately. However, as a returning player, you might find yourself at a bit of a disadvantage, diving into random BGs and then just being global by players that are walking at you with a massive amount of 684 plus item level on them. I mean, you're just gonna get flatlined immediately. So players have discovered a better way of being able to get PvP gear that doesn't involve you losing in battlegrounds. Instead, you just will continue to winning by playing around the crate meta. Essentially, players create a group using add-ons and timers in order to be able to guarantee spawns for crates within the different zones of the Kaz Algar. And players just roam around as a full raid group, going from one of these crates to the next, picking them up and collecting a bunch of currencies. It is a very efficient way of gearing out a new character. While it's not really super PvP hectic, as you're just going to be running around as a full raid group, so nobody's really going to end up stopping you or really engaging with you or trying to prevent you from being able to grab your crates. But it is still a very efficient method compared to losing a battle battlegrounds back to back. And the currencies that it rewards you for doing these crate runs can be anything from Bloody Tokens, which can actually be some decent starter gear, as well as Honor Point gear, which is just very bare bones items that are all pretty good and solid. And then also we have Conquest Points, which don't come nearly as easily in those crate runs, but it still is helpful overall, and it was fantastic for any returning players or even a brand new player that's just trying to find a way to gear up so you can dive into some of the more rated content. And this is one of the most easier ways for you to be able to start getting some PvP gear, to join an active crate group and then roam around as a band full of marauders, collecting all of these crates one by one from every single zone until you have enough currencies in order to be able to outfit your character to actually start diving into PvP combat, though with a little bit more preparedness this time around. But with that being said, as always, I do want to thank all of you guys so much for watching, and I hope you guys did enjoy this video. If you did enjoy it or found it informative, go ahead and give it a like. I would very much appreciate it. Join our Discord community to keep up with all the regular class changes or patch notes, or possibly even new updates for patch 11.17, currently available for testing on the PTR. As always, let me know all your thoughts in the comments down below, and as always, I'll see all of you guys in the next one.